In the blood-soaked dawn of America's birth, a chained man walked into the heart of hell, spying on kings and generals, his whispers birthing a nation. But divine justice waits in the shadows. For every secret stolen, a soul pays in eternal silence. What if freedom's price was your very existence, erased by the victors you saved? The mist clung to the Virginia earth like a shroud, heavy with the scent of damp soil and blooming tobacco leaves, as if the land itself mourned the sins buried beneath it. In 1760, on the sprawling Armistead Plantation in New Kent County, a vast empire of 300 acres where green fields rolled like waves under a relentless sun, James was born into a world that claimed his body before his first breath. No fanfare marked his arrival, no church bells tolled in celebration. Instead, his birth was scribbled in a dusty ledger, alongside entries for calves and colts, a mere notation of potential prophet, male, healthy, future field hand. The air in the birthing cabin was thick with sweat and whispers, the flickering light of a single tallow candle casting long shadows on rough-hewn walls that seemed to pulse with the quiet agony of generations. His mother, Ruth, a house servant with calloused hands and eyes that held the weight of unspoken rebellions, cradled him against her chest. She was a woman forged in the fire of endurance, her skin etched with faint scars from overseers' whims, her spirit a fortress hidden behind a veil of deference. Ruth's love was not the soft, boundless kind sung in ballads, it was a fierce, calculated armor, tempered by the knowledge that any display of too much affection could invite cruelty. "You are mine, little one," she murmured in the dim light, her voice a low hymn against the distant crack of whips echoing from the fields. "But this world will try to steal you. Hide your fire deep, where they can't touch it." Her words carried a biblical echo, reminiscent of the Israelites in Egypt, slaves under Pharaoh's yoke, dreaming of a promised land they might never see. In James, she saw not just a son, but a vessel for quiet vengeance, a mind sharp as David's sling against Goliath's might. His father? A ghost, sold south to Carolina's rice swamps before James could etch his face into memory. The sale was casual, a transaction over brandy in the big house, where William Armistead, master of this domain, balanced ledgers with the detachment of a merchant trading spices. Armistead's mansion loomed like a white marble idol, its columns gleaming under the sun, a facade of southern grandeur masking the rot within. Inside, crystal chandeliers caught the light, silverware clinked on fine china, and portraits of stern ancestors stared down, their eyes judging the living for perpetuating the family sin. The air smelled of polished wood and pipe tobacco, a stark contrast to the slaves' quarters, cramped cabins of splintered logs, where the wind whistled through cracks in the floor was packed earth, cold and unforgiving. From his earliest days, James learned the plantation's unholy rhythm, a cycle ordained not by God but by greed. Dawn broke with the toll of an iron bell, its clang reverberating like a judgment call, summoning souls to labor. Breakfast was meager, a bowl of cornmeal mush, lumpy and flavorless, sometimes flecked with bits of rancid pork fat if mercy smiled that day. The fields awaited, endless rows of tobacco plants, green sentinels that demanded blood and sweat. Hands blistered under the sun's glare, backs bent in perpetual supplication, the air humming with the low chants of work songs that masked cries of despair. These songs, passed down like forbidden psalms, spoke of rivers crossing to freedom, of chariots swinging low, spiritual codes woven into melody, hinting at divine deliverance from earthly bondage. Ruth's teachings were James's scripture. In the velvet black of night, when the overseers slept off their whiskey, she gathered him close. "Eyes down, boy," she'd say, her fingers tracing invisible chains on his wrists. "They fear a slave with sight, seeing their lies, their weaknesses. But you? You'll see it all. Lock it away, like treasure in heaven." Her words evoked the parables of Jesus, hiding lamps under bushels, storing wisdom where moths and rust couldn't corrupt. James absorbed this like parched soil drinks rain. He learned to navigate the plantation's treacherous currents, the overseer with the scarred knuckles, quick to lash out when hungover, the one with a Bible in his pocket, preaching hellfire while ignoring his own transgressions. He studied Armistead's moods, the generous days when a kind word slipped from liquor-loosened lips, the stormy ones when thunder in his voice foretold violence. Armistead fancied himself an enlightened sinner, a reader of Locke and Rousseau, pontificating on natural rights over port wine with neighboring planters. His library shelves groaned under leather-bound tomes, pages yellowed with age, discussing liberty as an abstract ideal. Yet, in the fields below, that liberty was a cruel joke. Armistead rarely wielded the whip himself, delegating brutality to hirelings, but his complicity stained his soul like tobacco juice on linen. He professed vague unease with slavery, a necessary evil, bound to wither in time, while counting profits from auction blocks. This hypocrisy hung in the air like smoke from curing barns, a spiritual dissonance that James sensed early. It was as if the master wrestled with an inner demon, a biblical wrestle like Jacob with the angel, but one where greed always pinned conscience to the mat. James was no ordinary child. While others stole moments to chase fireflies or whisper games under moonlight, he observed. His eyes, dark and piercing, mapped the plantation like a general surveying a battlefield. He noted how work gangs formed, predicting overseers' commands before they barked. He eavesdropped on house servants' gossip, the master's debts mounting like sins unconfessed, whispers of failed crops invoking divine wrath. Merchants' wagons creaked in, bringing tales from afar, ports buzzing with trade, cities alive with unrest. James couldn't read, the law forbade it, branding literacy a spark to rebellion, but he mastered a deeper language. Faces became texts, a furrowed brow signaling anger, a averted gaze hiding guilt. He anticipated needs, fetching tools before asked, earning a fragile safety in usefulness. By adolescence, his talents elevated him. No longer condemned to endless hoeing, he tended stables, the air rich with hay and horse sweat, leather saddles gleaming under lantern light. He mended plows, his hands intuitive with mechanics, fingers dancing over rusted iron like a healer laying on hands. Errands took him beyond the plantation's borders, roads winding through dense forests where sunlight dappled leaves, streams murmured secrets of escape. These journeys were breaths of freedom, the wind carrying scents of pine and possibility. Yet, danger lurked, patrols with hounds, eyes scanning for runaways. James moved with calculated humility, his posture a shield, mind racing ahead. The 1770s brought winds of change, invisible at first, like the Holy Spirit stirring before Pentecost. Newspapers rustled in the big house, their ink-smudged pages debated by firelight. House servants, invisible as ghosts, overheard rants on the Stamp Act, towns and duties, taxes as chains on white men's wrists. James pieced fragments, colonists chafing under a distant king, Parliament's tyranny echoing the overseer's rule. In 1775, shots at Lexington and Concord ignited the powder keg, news spreading like wildfire through slave quarters. Whispers grew, white folks fightin' for freedom while we in chains. The irony burned, a divine satire on hypocrisy. Planters like Armistead donned tricorn hats, rallying for liberty, their speeches invoking God-given rights, blind to the slaves toiling in shadows. James pondered this fracture, his mind a crucible forging strategy. Biblical tales Ruth shared, Daniel in the lion's den, surviving by wit, Moses parting seas for Exodus resonated. Revolution was chaos, a biblical flood washing away old orders, creating eddies where the clever might swim free. In 1779, British boots thundered into Virginia, redcoats like locusts devouring the land. Proclamations fluttered, freedom for slaves deserting rebel masters. Thousands fled, shadows slipping into night, toward uncertain liberty. Armistead's rolls dwindled from 63 to 41, his rage a tempest, cursing British perfidy, tightening chains with new guards. James watched runaways vanish into fog-shrouded woods, heart-torn. Freedom's siren call tempted, but caution whispered, was this divine manna or serpent's fruit? British offers reeked of strategy, not salvation, tools in war, discarded in peace. Early 1781 brought war's fury home. Benedict Arnold's raiders scorched earth, flames licking night skies, acrid smoke choking lungs. Continental forces pursued, ragged lines of bluecoats weaving through fields. The plantation became a crossroads of fate, hosting weary soldiers, tents sprouting like mushrooms, campfires crackling with stories of battles lost and won. Amid this maelstrom, James encountered destiny, Marie-Joseph Paul-Yves Roch-Gilbert du Mocher, Marquis de Lafayette. Lafayette arrived like a vision from across the sea, tall, flame-haired, his uniform crisp despite mud, eyes alight with revolutionary zeal. At 23, he embodied youthful idealism, a French aristocrat who crossed oceans for liberty's flame, defying king and kin. Washington saw him first as a gilded pest, but valor and fire, charging lines at Brandywine, wounded yet unyielding, earned paternal affection. Now commanding Virginia's Continentals, Lafayette faced grim odds, 3,000 men, green militia mixed with veterans, supplies thin as faith in dark times. British phantoms haunted every road, intelligence their ghostliest weapon. Lafayette needed eyes in the enemy camp, scouts invisible as air. He grasped what peers missed: society's unseen slaves were perfect phantoms. They moved like whispers, dismissed by white gaze, blending into backgrounds. A black man approaching British lines? Expected, welcomed under freedom edicts. Lafayette had deployed such spies before, trusting their stakes, personal redemption over patriotic abstraction. Encamped near Armistead's fields, Lafayette dined in the big house, candlelight flickering on silver, air heavy with roast venison and tension. Conversation danced: strategy, philosophy, slavery's thorn. Lafayette, blunt as a guillotine, challenged, "How reconcile liberty's cry with chains on men?" Armistead parried with practiced lies: inheritance, economics, humane treatment, his words hollow echoes in a soul's empty chamber. Pragmatism won. Lafayette eyed resources, probing for an asset. "I hear of your slave James, sharp, local knowledge intact." Negotiation unfolded, veiled in patriotism. Armistead loaned James like a horse, eyeing post-war favors, lands, honors. James learned post-decision, summoned to Lafayette's tent at dawn. Night sleepless, mind churning, fear's chill grip, curiosity's spark. Mother gone to fever's embrace, no ties binding him. Opportunity loomed, a divine door cracking open. Dawn painted skies in bruised grays, air crisp with spring's bite. James approached camp, steps measured, posture submissive yet dignified. Tents billowed like sails, smells of smoke, leather, unwashed men mingling. Lafayette's quarters, maps sprawled, quills scratching fate. He gestured sit, rare courtesy. James stood, habit ingrained, assessment began, intelligence, discretion tested. Lafayette's accent wove through words, eyes appraising not as property, but person. Mission unveiled: infiltrate British, pose runaway, gather secrets, troops, plans, supplies. Risk stark: capture meant noose, no mercy. Refusal? Master's wrath. But Lafayette's candor shone, no false promises of freedom, only advocacy. James weighed scales: survival's cage versus history's stage. Biblical undertones stirred: Joseph sold into Egypt, rising through cunning to save nations. "I'll do it," he declared, voice steady as anchored faith. Training commenced, 5 days reshaping slave to shadow warrior. Captain Benjamin Haynes, wiry Pennsylvanian with hawk eyes, drilled essentials. "Perform always," he barked, tend air thick with strategy sweat. Craft persona, grateful runaway, competent yet dim. Practice dialogues, memory drills, filing details like sacred scrolls. Interrogations simulated, pressure forging resilience. James excelled, lifetime's mask refined to art. As sun set on final day, he stood ready, a man chained yet unbound, stepping into war's maw, divine retribution's instrument. His legacy? A haunting whisper, justice deferred, sins of founders echoing eternally. The canvas of Lafayette's tent fluttered like the wings of a trapped bird, stirred by a spring breeze that carried the metallic tang of gunpowder and the earthy musk of trampled Virginia soil. Inside, shadows danced from a lantern's unsteady flame, casting elongated figures on the walls, ghostly spectators to the transformation unfolding. James stood there, his frame honed by years of toil, muscles corded like twisted ropes beneath skin marked by the faint ghosts of old scars. His eyes, dark pools reflecting the light, held a depth that Captain Haynes had come to recognize: not just intelligence, but a resilient spirit, forged in the fires of bondage, tempered by the cold anvil of survival. For 4 grueling days, Haynes had drilled him relentlessly, the air thick with the scent of sweat and oiled leather from nearby armory stacks. "You're not just remembering," Haynes had growled, his voice a rasp from too many campaigns, "you're building a fortress in your mind. One breach, and it's the noose." James nodded, his face a mask of deference, but inside, synapses fired like musket volleys, cataloging, associating, fortifying. He practiced personas until they fit like second skins: the grateful runaway, eyes wide with feigned awe; the dim laborer, shoulders slumped in submission. Dialogues rolled off his tongue, natural as breath, yet laced with calculated omissions, truths bent like reeds in wind, concealing the sharp edges beneath. On that 4th day, Lafayette entered like a biblical prophet stepping from the wilderness, his red hair aflame in the lantern glow, uniform crisp despite the mud caking his boots, eyes burning with the fervor of one touched by divine purpose. At 23, he carried the weight of nations, his idealism a sword against tyranny's shield. He circled James, appraising him not as chattel, but as a vessel for liberty's cause, a modern Moses, perhaps, leading his people through parted seas of redcoats. "Are you afraid?" Lafayette's accent wrapped the words in velvet, but the question pierced like a bayonet. James met his gaze, breaking the invisible chains of protocol that had bound him for 2 decades. "Yes, sir. Fear's been my shadow since birth." His voice was steady, resonant with the timbre of field song hymns sung in secret. Lafayette's lips twitched, a nod to the raw honesty. "Good. Fear is the sentinel of caution. Arrogance is the grave digger of spies." He paused, the tense silence broken only by distant sentry calls, echoing like judgments from on high. "But commitment? That is the soul's forge. Will you falter in the lion's den, with no Daniel's angel to save you?" James's mind flashed to Ruth's whispers, her biblical tales of endurance, of Job's trials testing faith's mettle. "I've worn chains every dawn, sir. Lived in fear's grip. This? It's fear with purpose. I choose it, like David chose his stone." Lafayette's eyes softened, a flicker of paternal respect crossing his aristocratic features. Turning to Haynes, he queried, "Is he forged true?" Haynes, leaning against a map-strewn table, rubbed his stubbled chin. "As ready as hell's heat can make a man. Sharp as a blade, careful as a thief in the night. Motive runs deep, freedom's fire in his veins." "But the field? That's God's gamble." Lafayette's decision fell like a gavel. "We proceed. Dawn brings your departure. Haynes will etch the paths of contact, the shadows of escape." As he left, the tent flapside shut, leaving James with the weight of destiny. That night, assigned a solitary tent, a luxury unknown in slave quarters, he lay on a rough cot, the canvas above a starry vault pierced by doubts. Moonlight filtered through seams, painting silver runes on the ground, symbols perhaps of divine scripts unread. He thought of Ruth, her voice a spectral echo, "Hide your mind, child, lest it become your noose." Now, he would wield it as Excalibur, risking soul and sinew in war's unholy arena. Fear clawed at his chest, a beast roused from slumber, but beneath it stirred excitement, a spark of rebellion, kindled by the promise of agency. Sleep came in fragments, haunted by visions of gallows swaying in wind, crows circling like avenging angels. Dawn broke with a chill that seeped into bones, the sky a bruised canvas streaked with gold. The Virginia countryside unfolded before James as he set out alone, boots crunching on gravel paths lined with budding oaks, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind. Spring's deceptive peace cloaked the land, wildflowers nodded in meadows, birds trilled from branches heavy with dew, streams gurgled like forgotten psalms. Yet, scars of war marred the idle, charred husks of farmhouses, fields fallow and choked with weeds, abandoned carts tilted like fallen idols. The air carried the faint rot of unburied conflict, a reminder that beneath beauty lurked the serpent's coil. James carried no pack, only the weight of his cover story, a narrative woven tighter than a hangman's knot. Haynes's final words echoed, "Patience is your armor. Rush, and you shatter. Blend like smoke and fog." The road to Portsmouth wound through hamlets where refugees huddled, eyes hollow with despair, farmers coaxed life from reluctant soil, and patrols clattered by, sabers glinting like judgments. A black man alone drew scant notice. He was backdrop, not player, errand runner, message bearer, invisible thread in society's tapestry. By late afternoon, Portsmouth's silhouette loomed, a fortress birthed from chaos, earthworks rising like ancient ramparts, palisades spiked against invasion. Redcoats swarmed like locusts, their uniforms vivid. Against the dun landscape, Hessians in blue-green, stoic and foreign, loyalists in motley garb, faces etched with desperate allegiance. Checkpoints bristled with bayonets, the air humming with commands and the clank of arms. James approached with heart thundering like war drums, but his exterior was sculpted humility, eyes downcast, shoulders bowed in nervous anticipation. 2 sentries barred his path, veterans with sun-leathered skin and eyes dulled by endless vigilance. "Halt! State your intent." The command barked like a overseer's whip. James halted, voice trembling with feigned hope, seeking His Majesty's service, sirs. Runaway from rebel chains. Heard freedom calls to those who cross. They exchanged weary glances, another soul in the flood.
From whence? Armistead's lands, New Kent. Master whispered of sail South George's hell fields.
Better British mercy than that grave.
Skills probed, labor? Horses? Builds? I, sirs, fields bent my back, stables taught my hands, carpentrymen's what's broke. Literacy? None, sirs. A grunt of approval. Quartermaster's depot, inside gates. Work earns feed, trouble earns lead. Freedom? When victory crowns.
Waved through, James crossed the threshold, the checkpoint's shadow lifting like a lifted curse. He was in, swallowed by the beast's belly. Portsmouth pulsed with martial frenzy, a babble of accents and arms. Warehouses morphed to barracks, homes to officer lairs, streets choked with wagons, air thick with forged smoke, horse dung, and the salty brine from docks where ships groaned under cargo. Runaways like him toiled everywhere, unloading crates with grunts echoing like chain laments, hammering stakes into earth that drank sweat like blood offerings, scrubbing pots in cookfires that spat embers like hell's sparks. The quartermaster's depot buzzed like a hive, a warehouse of ledgers and lists. James queued behind fellow fugitives, ears attuned to their tales, echoes of his own forged narrative, whip scars, families splintered at auction, hopes pinned on British banners.
His turn, name? James, sir. Master? Armistead, New Kent. Skills noted, literacy denied. Assigned, construction on North Earthworks, Sergeant Welsh at dawn. Quarters, dockside warehouse. Dismissed with a curt wave. The laborer's haven was a tobacco-scented cavern, bunks stacked like coffins, air heavy with bodies heat and dreams deferred. 200 souls crammed in, men, women, shadows of plantations escaped. Rations fairer than master's scraps, bread, salted meat, a measure of ale. Conversations bloomed in the dim, Samuel, bunkmate from Williamsburg, shared wisdom. They feed steady, no lashes like home. Officers vary, some spit boy, others nod respect. Strange, being seen. James probed gently, freedom true? Samuel's shrug carried worlds. Tool for victory, maybe. But beats the devil we fled. In the warehouse's gloom, as snores rose like a chorus of the damned, fear uncoiled in James's gut, a serpent twisting, reminding him of isolation's peril. Discovery meant not just death, but erasure, soul adrift, unavenged. Yet, resolve hardened, this was his exodus, a chance to tip scales of justice. 6 weeks blurred into a crucible of observation, labor's grind masking espionage's art. Days began with dawn's drumroll, formations crisp under rising sun, rations distributed with grudging equity, regulars feasting better than militia, Hessians hoarding their own. James hauled timber, dug trenches deep as graves, earth clinging to skin like sin's residue. But his eyes were eagles, mapping fortifications, cannon emplacements glinting ominously, fields of fire sweeping like reapers' scythes, vulnerabilities hidden in shadows. Docks offered bounty, ships from New York disgorging crates, ammunition spikes signaling offensives, medicinals hinting wounds to come. Soldiers chattered freely around him, voices carrying over hammer strikes, supply woes, mercenary frictions like Cain and Abel's rift, whispers of Cornwallis's imminent thunder. Officers debated strategies as if he were deaf stone, naval patrols faltering against rebel ghosts, frustrations boiling like prophetic wrath. Intelligence flowed to Lafayette via cunning conduits, weekly forays beyond walls, foraging woods where leaves rustled like turning pages, markets where contacts brushed like fate's hand. A free black farmer 1 week, coded words amid barter, a loyalist's wife the next, basket hiding signals. Verbal dispatches, troop counts, 4,000 regulars, 2,000 militia, 800 Hessians, plans etched in memory's vault. Lafayette's handlers marveled, James's whispers reshaping campaigns, divine intervention through mortal vessel. Then, May 20, 1781, Cornwallis descended like a fallen angel, his arrival heralded by trumpets piercing the morning mist. Britain's warhound, battle-scarred from continents afar, ice cold as Judgment Day. Frustrated by rebel phantoms, he sought Virginia's heart to stake his claim, Portsmouth his bastion, efficiency his creed. Changes swept, drills sharpened, works hastened, patrols prowled like wolves. Enter Captain Richard Durham, intelligence's fox, lean frame cloaked in suspicion, pipe smoke curling like incense to false gods.
He dissected operations, exposing veins. Loyalist whispers sufficed for externals, but Continental minds remained veiled.
He needed penetration, a spy to pierce the veil. Interviews culled runaways, too sharp, too dull, until James.
Summon mid-labor, fear spiked like
thorns in Christ's crown. Durham's office, tobacco haze, papers stacked like indictments. Sit. James complied, submissive veil intact. Probed, background, loyalty, knowledge. Rebels? Thoughts?
Distant thunder, sir, not my storm.
The pitch, infiltrate, observe, return. Danger stark, hangman's dance if caught. Appeal to vengeance, strike the chain's forgers. James feigned hesitation, then assent, reluctance melting to resolve. Durham's smile, serpent's satisfaction.
Thus, the double life birthed triple, truly, surface drone, British spy in training, true continental shadow. 2 weeks forge, Durham imparted arts, queries veiled, memories chained, covers woven. James absorbed, noting revelations, British blind spots, planted falsehoods like Judas's kiss.
Mid-June, dispatched, story of regret, homesick return.
Pass in hand, James stepped forth a man fractured, soul teetering on redemption's edge, divine retribution's pawn in history's game.
His deceptions? Seeds sown in fertile ground, promising a harvest of justice or damnation.
The June sun beat down on the dusty Virginia road like the judgment of an unforgiving God, turning the air thick with heat and the scent of parched earth mixed with distant gunpowder.
James walked it alone again, boots grinding gravel that seemed to echo his fracturing resolve.
2 months prior, he had approached Portsmouth as a supplicant. Now he returned from it, a vessel overflowing with dual poisons, genuine British secrets for Lafayette troop dispositions etched in his memory like commandments carved in stone, and the crafted falsehoods Durham had pressed upon him, seeds of deception meant to bloom into continental miscalculation. The complexity gnawed at him, a spiritual torment akin to the temptations of Christ in the wilderness, multiple realities warring within one mind. He had to hold 4 truths simultaneously: what the British believed he believed, what he truly knew from shadowed observations, what he was scripted to report back, and the unvarnished reality that could damn him if it slipped. A single stutter, a misplaced detail, and the noose awaited either British rope for treason or continental lead for suspected perfidy. His mother's voice haunted the miles: hide your mind, child. Now it was his weapon, sharpened to a razor's edge, yet threatening to cut its wielder. By midday, Continental pickets halted him, muskets leveled, eyes narrowed in suspicion.
A black man emerging from enemy lines? Defector or serpent?
They bound his wrists loosely as symbolic chains and marched him under guard, the air buzzing with murmurs of spies and hangings. Interrogation began in a canvas tent smelling of coffee grounds and anxiety, hours of probing questions, faces hard as flint. James answered with measured truth: Portsmouth's fortifications, supply rhythms, officer tensions, details vivid enough to build trust, yet silent on his deeper allegiance. No mention of Lafayette, that compartment remained sealed, accessible only through sacred codes. Then came the phrase, whispered like a password from ancient scripture: you seem like someone who pays attention to details. James replied, voice steady despite the tremor in his soul: my mother always said noticing things kept you alive.
Recognition flashed, guards relaxed.
An hour later, in a secluded tent, Captain Haynes embraced him, a brief, fierce clasp that spoke volumes in a world of guarded hearts. We feared you'd been lost.
Relief washed over James like cool rain on fevered skin.
Debriefing stretched into night, lantern light flickering on maps like divine illumination. James recounted everything: 4,000 regulars fortified, Hessian frictions like Kane's jealousy, Durham's hunger for continental artillery placements. He handed over Durham's planted lies, exaggerated strengths, phantom supplies, to be dissected and inverted. Haynes's grin was wolfish, perfect. We feed them dreams of our power while you harvest their truths. For a week, they forged the return package, mostly accurate details laced with strategic venom, troop numbers inflated like puffed pride, positions shifted to lure false attacks, supplies painted rosier than reality.
The aim? Make Cornwallis cautious, blind to vulnerabilities, delaying the hammer blow.
Lafayette came personally, exhaustion etching lines on his youthful face, yet eyes alight with gratitude.
You've pierced the heart of the beast, James. Durham trusts you as his own shadow. James's voice cracked. How long, sir? Each crossing tightens the noose. One slip. Lafayette's hand rested on his shoulder, firm as an oath. I ask the impossible, knowing the cost. But your eyes inside Cornwallis could end this war. On my honor as a nobleman, I will fight for your freedom, document every deed, testify before assemblies, wield every influence. It was no ironclad promise, but in a world of broken vows, the Frenchman's sincerity shone like a beacon. James crossed back the next dawn, pass in hand, carrying the hybrid intelligence like a cursed relic. The double game had fully ensnared him, surface loyalist to Durham, reluctant defector to interrogators, true patriot to Lafayette. July and August blurred into a purgatory of crossings, 6 more journeys between lines, each a gauntlet of dread. 10 days to 2 weeks in British camps, laboring under sun that scorched like divine wrath, observing fortifications rising like Babel's tower, overhearing Cornwallis's counsels as if eavesdropping on fallen angels. Then pretext for return family checks, deeper scouting, briefings from Durham revealing British blind spots, artillery queries exposing fears of siege, naval concerns hinting desperation. Each continental debrief with Haynes was meticulous alchemy, genuine British intel harvested like forbidden fruit, false reports crafted to mislead. The strain manifested physically, weight melting from his frame, hands trembling like leaves in storm, nightmares where both armies judged him in unison, gallows creaking under dual ropes. Once, Durham confronted a contradiction, loyalist scout denying cannon on a ridge James claimed. Heart pounding like war drums, James spun, wagons moved at dusk, sir, perhaps relocated, or scout mistook the hill. Durham's stare bored deep, but suspicion yielded to wartime fog. Another casual probe from an officer, plantation details, slave counts, tested memorized lore against lived truth. James answered from memory's vault, hands shaking as he walked away. Psychological fracture came in waves. In late July, overhearing Cornwallis map-gazing, Yorktown, the York River for Navy, defensible heights, interior access. We fortify here. Every word seared into James's mind like prophecy. He reported it within days. Haynes's eyes widened. If he digs in, he's siege bait. Block the bay, surround him, victory. The seed of Yorktown sprouted from James's whisper. Mid-August brought breaking. Witnessing a runaway woman's public hanging, rope snapping taut, body jerking in final rebellion shattered something sacred. That could be him, would be, inevitably. No mortal sustained such deception forever. That night, delivering intel to a free black contact under moonless woods, voice flat, I'm done. Terrified every breath. The man's clasp offered solidarity, no answers. James returned alone, trapped in commitment's iron cage, mission's momentum unstoppable, risks already paid in blood and sanity. Unbeknownst to him, his fragments fueled grand strategy. Washington, eyeing New York, pivoted south on intelligence of Cornwallis's concentration, 500-mile march cloaked in deception. De Grasse's fleet sailed from Caribbean, timing divine. Lafayette contained, feigning weakness. James's reports Yorktown fortifications accelerating, supplies thinning, refined the trap. False feeds to Durham reinforced illusions, Lafayette withdrawing, morale crumbling, French Navy distant. Cornwallis trusted, blind to gathering storm. September 2, French fleet stormed Chesapeake, battle raging 5 days, British Navy repelled. Sea escape severed. Panic rippled, Cornwallis fortified, confident in walls. September 14, Washington's vanguard arrived. By 26th, 20,000 allies encircled 8,000 British. James, trapped inside, watched siege descend like apocalyptic judgment. Bombardment October 9, thunder unending, earth trembling, cannonballs ripping flesh and fort alike. Laborers like him shored crumbling ramparts under fire that lit nights orange. Rations shrank, horses butchered, disease festering in dysentery and typhus. Morale decayed, defiance to desperation to resignation. Durham, amid chaos, confronted once, false intel doomed us. Lafayette stronger than reported. James, neutral, I reported what I saw, sir. Durham's gaze lingered, suspicion flickering, but futility silenced accusation. October 14, redoubts stormed in night assault. Perimeter shrank. October 16, failed breakout across York River, storm scattering hopes. October 17, drummer on parapet, parley flag. Guns hushed. October 19, surrender formalized. British marched out, colors cased, arms stacked in orderly rows, third of forces in America yielded. James watched from labor lines, witnessing empires fall, soul heavy with unseen cost. Victory birthed, but his chains remained, freedom promised, yet deferred, a haunting reminder that even saviors of nations bear sins unatoned, legacies shadowed by divine silence. The surrender unfolded with the grim pageantry of empires in decline. October 19, 1781, British ranks marched from Yorktown's battered ramparts in precise columns, drums muffled, fifes silent save for the slow funeral cadence of defeat. Officers knelt to present swords to American counterparts, gleaming steel surrendered like fallen crowns, while bands played "The World Turned Upside Down," an ironic hymn to the reversal of fortunes. Flags furled in the autumn wind, crimson folds catching the pale sun like blood drying on linen. James stood among the throng of enslaved laborers, bodies pressed close in the chill, the air thick with gunpowder residue, sweat, and the metallic tang of spent hope. He watched Cornwallis's capitulation from the edges, anonymous in the crowd, his contribution invisible yet decisive. This moment, the effective end of major combat in the Revolution, owed its existence to his shadowed footsteps, his memorized maps, his carefully calibrated lies. Yet here he remained, property among the free, a ghost in the celebration. Continental forces moved with methodical efficiency, claiming the town like reclaiming stolen land. Officers inventoried captured supplies, crates of powder, barrels of salt pork, wagons of rum, while prisoners were herded into guarded enclosures. The runaways who had sought British protection found themselves in purgatory, no longer crown property, yet not emancipated by the victors. Legal limbo hung over them like fog off the York River, thick and disorienting. James moved through the chaos with urgent purpose, eyes scanning for the one face that held his fate. He spotted Lafayette amid a cluster of jubilant officers, tricorn hats doffed, handshakes exchanged, laughter ringing against the backdrop of smoldering earthworks. Approaching broke every protocol of rank and race, yet desperation overrode caution. "General Lafayette, sir." The words cut through the din. Lafayette turned, momentary confusion clouding his aristocratic features, then recognition ignited like a flare. "James, my God, you live." He stepped forward, gripping James's shoulder with a warmth that defied protocol, pulling him aside to a quieter corner where cannon smoke still curled lazily. Joy warred with guilt in the general's eyes. "Your reports, extraordinary. Vital. Haynes showed me every dispatch. Without them, Yorktown might have remained a dream." Gratitude poured forth, sincere as gospel. James swallowed, the question burning, "And my freedom, sir?" "You said when the war was won." Lafayette's face tightened, discomfort etching deeper lines. "James, I lack the authority. You remain Armistead's property under Virginia law. I can testify, petition the Assembly, expend every ounce of influence, but I cannot declare you free." The words landed like bayonet thrusts. James had risked execution 6 times over, lived in terror's embrace, delivered the intelligence that sealed Cornwallis's fate, and still, chains lingered. "You promised," he whispered, voice cracking like dry earth. Lafayette's reply was earnest, constrained. "I promised my utmost effort. I will compose the strongest testimony, lobby personally, rally every ally. This is not denial, only delay. The law binds even victors." Hope's death was quiet, a slow bleed. James nodded, accepting what he had half expected. A sincere vow from a good man trapped in a sinful system. He returned to the Armistead plantation in late October, retracing spy paths now as a returned laborer. William Armistead greeted him with measured approval. Patriotism reflected well on the master, yet the fields awaited unchanged. Tobacco leaves rustled under James's hands, the sun beat down as before, but the man who bent to the task was altered. He had danced with generals, outwitted empires, submission now felt like wearing another's skin. The post-war years ground slower than espionage's urgency. Purpose evaporated, leaving only erosion. He married Rosa in 1786, a neighboring plantation's enslaved woman, their union negotiated through masters, solemnized in secret church rites without legal weight. Children arrived, born into the same shadow. James never burdened Rosa with his full story, what use in tales no one would credit? He worked, worshipped, survived, yet part of him remained at Yorktown, entombed with the unacknowledged. Lafayette honored his oath. In 1784, a testimonial letter arrived for the Virginia Assembly, eloquent certification of essential services, intelligence industriously collected and faithfully delivered, conduct meriting every reward his situation can admit. Signed by a revolutionary icon, it should have sufficed. Denied. Insufficient proof, precedent fears, the excuses masked economic truth, Virginia's soul was bound to slavery. Petitions in 1786, 1787 each rejection a nail in Hope's coffin. White veterans claimed lands, pensions, statues, James remained 3/5 in census ledgers, full chattel in reality. Lafayette, appalled upon learning of the denials, penned a fiercer plea in 1786, his services, far beyond any I have mentioned. I have never seen a man I more highly esteem. Armistead, perhaps moved by conscience or calculation, added support. January 1787, the Assembly relented, an exceptional act, explicitly no precedent. Freedom at 40, after 6 years of post-war pleading. He took the surname Lafayette, a badge of gratitude in defiance. Purchased 40 marginal acres near New Kent, poor soil, but his. Built a cabin with calloused hands that once memorized artillery counts. Rosa and children joined, church formalized their bond. Yet freedom was hemmed, no vote, no jury, freedom papers mandatory lest re-enslavement beckon. He farmed with quiet ferocity, bought family members' freedom piecemeal, years of labor consumed in redemption's slow currency. Silence cloaked his past, free blacks dared not boast in a suspicious society. Lafayette toured America in 1824, aged 67, white-haired yet regal. Parades honored him, he sought James. In Richmond, amid elites, the reunion unfolded publicly, Lafayette crossing crowds to embrace him, my dear friend. I owe so much to you. Tears came unbidden after decades dry. Not general, friends, equals. He proclaimed James's espionage to witnesses, finest spy, Yorktown's architect, independence's silent savior. Newspapers chronicled the touching scene, framed as Lafayette's generosity. Read, admired, forgotten. James returned to his acres, knowing acclaim's fleeting nature. He died August 1830, around 70, records imprecise for black lives. Buried in a churchyard, simple cross soon rotted. No honors, no obituaries. Family remembered vaguely, something in the war. Details blurred across generations. America built its myth, hail the martyr spy, founding fathers demigods. James vanished, documents archived, ignored. Not accident, his story indicted hypocrisy, liberty proclaimed while enslaving its deliverer. Easier erasure than reckoning. Mid-20th century, historians unearthed letters, petitions, reports. Marker in New Kent, 1970s. Textbooks sidebar mentions. 2007 stamp. Recognition belated, incomplete. Grave lost to time, bones mingling with Virginia soil, anonymous among the forgotten. Yet truth endures in archives, waiting. James Armistead Lafayette, slave, spy, architect of victory, denied its fruits. He changed history, then watched it forget him. Divine justice? Perhaps in the telling now, his name spoken, contribution reclaimed. Incomplete redemption, but real. The soil keeps his silence, the story breaks it. He deserved more. At last, we remember.